Hello YouTube viewers, welcome to my show Camera Tuesday. In today's episode, we're going to take a closer look at 4K Pro HandyCams. So let's dive right into it. Now, first thing you have to understand, nowadays handycams are suffering almost a complete market loss. However, they still have certain reasons to exist. Primary one of them being is made for video, and it's made for video only. You have to understand this way. Until recently, only one or two camera, basically Panasonic GH5. Other than that, one or two camera only had the ability to record more than 30-minute continuous. The reason for that was that European Union had a trade agreement. Basically, they charged a video camera much more. Basically, the tax was more, but photo camera was lower than that. But there was a caveat: if your photo camera can record video, it must record less than 30. So less than 30 was considered not a video camera. So that reason there is a 30-minute limit, even though everything else can work. Now, in very early days when video first came into the scene, there was only like 10 minutes of it. But that time YouTube was also recording only. There was a 10-minute limitation on YouTube, so nobody complained. But as YouTube limitation was expanded, people are like, dude, now we want more. But even today, even though in 2019 the limitation was removed, basically now there won't be a tax. So far only two cameras has come out that is utilizing it, basically Sony A6400 and if I'm not mistaken, Panasonic G85. So you have to understand that even though these can record very long, they are not meant for it. This on the other hand is meant for it. Basically it will not have any arbitrary limit. Basically you can't change the aperture, you can't change this, or you can't do that. It won't be the case with Pro HandyCams. They have basically no recording limits and no control issues. Basically, oh, you can't change this, or you can't do that. They will all allow you to do all, at least basic everything. Now of course you can't go into like, hey, codecs and change the codecs and all that, but everything else you can easily change and control. Now they are built for endurance. This is a critical aspect. Even though let's say you are filming a wedding, and wedding can easily stretch up to like, let's say 3 hours. Let's say a Christian wedding may be shorter than that, but let's say Indian weddings generally stretch for 6 to 9 hours. So if you have a scenario like that where you are like, okay, I want to make a video. Awesome, you are making a video, you have a very big camera, you have like A7 Mark III, you're gonna get very good shallow depth of field, lens is awesome, everything is awesome. But here's the deal, the camera can only record for certain amount of time. Now let's say that firmware hack is done to make sure you can record much longer. Okay, but what do you do once the battery runs out? And battery will run out in around 1 hour and 30 minutes maximum. So this is the point of this sort of puppies. They have big batteries, and you can buy even bigger battery. That's why the battery is generally mounted externally. So you can put an even taller battery. So you can buy a battery that can barely give you 2 to 3 hours, and then upgrade a battery and get like 9 to 10 hours of video recording. The endurance part is very critical for this. Then it also has a lot of input and output. Now this may not be apparent to you in first go, but as you use it more you realize, okay, this is something very important. Like for example, most of Pro HandyCams generally have dual XLR input. Now I'm like, why do I want to use that? Think of it this way. Many wedding ceremonies generally nowadays have DJs. Now DJ have a console where they are playing the music. That console generally have an output, sometimes XLR output. Now most good DJ consoles have XLR output. You can literally feed that data directly into your camcorder, and the audio will be recorded cleanly. That's important. Now if it's recorded cleanly, not from a microphone, it will be very clear and crystal. So and that way you can easily edit in post to give your feeling, to give your mood. That is awesome. Then the fact that there is also a second port, you can use it for, let's say there is a guest who is entertaining everyone, and like, you know, he has a mic on. You can clone that input and then record it in your camera cleanly directly to a discrete channel, and you can change it, edit in post. You like, okay, DJ is way too loud, let's tone down the DJ and enjoy the jokes and whatever is happening. So that 2 XLR input becomes very important in this sort of scenario. And whatever I'm talking about, I'm generally talking about big sensor cameras. The reason for that is nowadays mobile phone can really do some things, like they are really getting good. So this is a medium format, basically this white box. Now if you take the contrast, basically 35mm full frame, that's small. But again, everything is based around that, simply because this became the most successful format when I'm talking about films. So 35 more, then you come to like 1.5x smaller. It's basically APS-C sensor, which is generally used for Nikon. Then you come down a little bit more, 1.6x, that is APS-C for Canon. what I am using right now. Then you come down even smaller, then you get micro four third. Then you come down even smaller, you get 1 inch. Now this is the limiting point. I will say please do not go below 1 inch sensor. Now of course, depending on your need, you may want to go lower. Let's say you are doing a lot of scam videos, basically where you want to scam people and run away. You want a camera that does not have a shallow depth of field. So in those sort of scenario, getting 1 by 2.5 inch sensor, that would be really awesome for you, because they won't have shallow depth of field and autofocus meshing won't be an issue. So in those sort of scenario, you may enjoy it. Or maybe you do something where you have a lot of run and gun and you are not always sure where you can compose the shot, you may enjoy a smaller sensor. However, to get a very clean, specifically low light performance, you must want to be at 1 inch, minimum 1 inch. Don't go below that. Like 1 inch, micro four third, APS-C, and full frame if you can afford it. But again, at full frame you are spending more than cinema cameras. And even in cinema, full frame is not normally used. In cinema, APS-C is used, and they call it super 35mm, basically APS-C size. So you have to understand, in cinema, if you really want a cinema camera that has full frame, it's classified as large format. So big sensor plays a very critical role, especially in low light. Everything else can be made with good software, with good processor, with good sensor design. You can reduce all the issues. But one thing you cannot change is basically low light performance. Then we come to the aspect which is very painful for most of us, is that it's super expensive. Now you might be like, why it's so expensive? Now again, it has lens. Okay, that's fair enough, but you can easily buy a DSLR which has like comparable technology, heck, bigger sensor size and with more lens elements and all that, and still is cheaper. Why? Because it has very low availability. This is the issue of basically mirrorless and DSLR killing the video market, because they became good enough. Like many people can do good enough. Like 10 minutes was the limit in the early days, so nobody even wanted to buy these things. But as more and more people are like starting to use that, now 30 minutes. Now 30 minutes is a very good enough time. And even if people are doing documentary shoots, so people are doing like hidden expose and all that in mirrorless and DSLR and all that, then people stop buying this. So now there is only two stages: either you have DSLR or you directly go to Red Epic. So this suffered very severely. And this also compounded a fact, even though less people were buying this, companies started removing them from their main page. Basically, you go to Sony main page, you will not find Sony cameras. You will find A series cameras and all that. But to find this, you have to go into Pro section. And here's the problem: in Pro section, none of the items have their pricing listed, so anybody can rip you off. These two things combined, that they are expensive because not enough of them are selling, so there is a profit. They have to increase the profit margin, otherwise they won't be able to make it. And the fact that they are low availability now, because any shop you go to, they're like, hey, you have mirrorless? Yeah, I have mirrorless. You have micro four third? I have micro four. You have Pro video cam? It's like, what? So these two things compound makes it ludicrously expensive. Then we come to the final question, the most interesting one. It's like, what to buy? Okay, you have to ask, what the hell do you want to do with it? Now, this is very critical. This is very important, and it is only unique to you. That is why I specified. Many pro cameras still use very small sensors, even though 1 inch sensor are cheap, even though micro four third is even cheaper, but they don't want to use it because let's say you are shooting wildlife and autofocus, no autofocus can keep up a flying bird or things of like that nature in a video in autofocus continuously. It's very difficult, very hard to do. Even best autofocus camera will struggle a lot, and you don't want rolling shutter because you're gonna be like moving your camera. A smaller sensor will help you in this regard. So that is why many Panasonic cameras have small sensors. And let's say you are doing a lot of sports photography where you have to see very far. Smaller sensor means higher zoom magnification for your lens. So generally that will also be another benefit. So all these things aside, you have to think, what do you want? First, sit down and figure that out. Then, how much post-processing are you willing to do? This is critical aspect. Now, what I mean by post-processing, I'm not just meaning like, okay, take the video file, cut out the useless part and like just export. Not that. Post-processing as in like, are you intending to denoise the video? Are you intending to change the color tone, white balance, and like basically, do you want to color the video? If so, their requirements would be completely different. Then there is a storage medium you have to worry about. Now, you may buy, let's say, a Pro HandyCam. Like there are some Sony very high-end pro cameras, but they require XQD. and SQDs are very expensive. And then even on that, let's say you figured it out, or you're using a red black magic cameras and you have external SSD, you still have to put it somewhere. You might gonna need basically network attached storage to keep all that video file. It's gonna be very problematic to deal with. So give you a context. Many times people are nowadays wondering, why buy a video camera when my mobile phone could do 4K 60 frame per second, image stabilize, all that. Why do I need this? Well, one simple reason. To give you a rough idea, iPhone generally have 4K 60 frame per second, but that only does 55 Mbps. Now whenever somebody says Mbps, they are generally referring to small b bit basically. So 55 megabit per second becomes 7 megabytes per second. That translates to, for 1 hour of video recording, you will be creating 3 gigabyte of information. Basically you need 4 gigabyte SD card for 1 hour recording. Sounds good enough, sounds reasonable enough, but here's the deal. If you're using a DSLR or mirrorless, even a comparable one, you can easily reach up to 150 Mbps. Now this is what I am dealing with. Now bit lower than that, not exactly that, but 150 Mbps translates to 19 megabytes per second. So basically at this stage in time, you have to have a memory card that is U3. Basically bare minimum of 30 Mbps write speed continuous must be there. That translates to upwards of 70 gigabyte in 1 hour. Let that sink in. You have to burn 70 gigabyte of memory just for 1 hour of video footage, and it's not even raw. 1 hour of video footage. Now there are some Canon C200, there are some very high-end cameras which are like you push it, they are like Panasonic especially, they're like 400 Mbps. Awesome. That translates to 50 Mbps. Basically at this point in time, you cannot rely on U3 cards. You have to buy a V series card, which has to have the bare minimum of V60 or V90 if you want to be in safe. So that translates to 180 gigabyte per hour. That's a lot of data, like 180 gigabyte per day. And imagine you doing that on a basically big scenario where you have to record the game for like 6-7 hours for a school shooting, or you have to do wedding ceremony and all that. They can stretch out for more than 1 hour. You have to understand, basically you have to buy a lot of hard drives to handle this. And I'm not talking about resolution, these are all 4K. So common people cannot tell the difference between, okay, it's 4K, so it's 4K, so it's 4K. No, all 4Ks are different. There is a reason why red epics are so expensive, even though they can only do 4K 60 frames per second. It's not like, okay, 4K 5000 frames per second. Okay, this is the reason. This is the critical aspect you have to understand. Now again, if you don't intend to do post-processing, all you're gonna do is like cut and all that, you still want to make sure your video looks good. Now mobile compresses a lot. Now depending on the processor, depending on the algorithm, depending on the scenario, sometimes compression does a wonderful job. So your file size is very small, but your quality loss is negligible. Other times the quality loss would be so serious, you'll be like, dude, I cannot make out what's happening. Specifically if you have something with high detail. Basically, let's say groom is wearing, bride or groom, they are wearing something that has intricate detail. Those will be thrown out inside. They will look just muddled. Now, and I'm talking just resolution exactly the same, but like at 4K from 7 Mbps to 4K at 50 Mbps, you can easily tell that difference. And in post-processing, you can improve the sharpness, contrast, whatever. Like you want to remove, like show that, let's say some people wear sherwani to their wedding. Now this is an Indian traditional gown, but it has intricate patterns, like insane amount of detailing is done to bride side and groom side also. So groom dress is very detailed, like very intricate and all that. So it does not have big bling things, but it has like very intricate detail patterns. So capture that, you need something that can record bare minimum of 150 Mbps. Try that recording with 55 Mbps. Yeah, it's not gonna work out. So you have to understand how much you are willing to do in computer. And even if you're not doing that, it's not like, okay, I'm not gonna do video editing, all I'm gonna do is trim the footage. You still may want to have that 190 Mbps or 150 Mbps, because that will allow you to compress properly. When your big computer processor is going to compress it, if it has more data, it can compress more effectively. This is the why people even bother to buy something big and expensive. This is why I am talking about video cameras. Now, are there some options? Like these sort of options should give you an idea what is available in the market right now. So you can buy a Canon XF405, bit old, but it's 1-inch one, reasonably priced, quote unquote, but it's 1-inch sensor. It's very good. Like it does what it's supposed to do. It's a good camera with no recording limit, with a lot of other functions, basically flip out screen, external battery. Basically all camcorders have external battery because you can buy a taller battery. So you can get that. It has dual XLR. Heck, you can even remove the sound part. If you don't need the sound that much, you can remove that. Monitoring system, direct power input, all that, even SDI. So SDI input is there. You can check my detailed video about SDI here. So that really translates to more usable camera experience. Then you come to Sony. Now this one is really high end because it has like a 3 lens ring. Basically one ring is there for controlling aperture, one ring is there to controlling the focus, another ring is there to controlling the zoom. All 3 can be directly controlled with basically lens ring. So you can create your own feeling, emotions and all that, whatever you need to do. And it has integrated ND filters. So if you're doing bright outdoor shooting, you really gonna need that. It also has dual input and all that, and dual SD card. And many of them has this option where you can swap out memory card while you are recording. So if you are recording something very long, you can just remove one card and it will directly start writing on the second card. You can put one blank card in and keep continuously recording. And sometimes you can do redundant recording if you like. Let's say sports when you really want to have redundant recording. Actually everywhere you want to have redundant recording, but again, if you don't want redundant recording, you can utilize that dual card for longer recording. So that's also useful. And then we have this Panasonic DVX200. Now bit more expensive, but again sensor is also bigger and it can also go very high bitrate, 150 megabits per second. Generally none of them go to 400. Sometimes they can go to 200 like in certain frame rates, but that's more than good enough for run and gun shoot. Like for 200 mbps is more than good enough. If the sensor is good, if the lens is good, you're gonna get good result. 400 is not gonna make that much of a difference. Yes, 50 to 150, that's a night and day difference. Basically your text will become more readable, your texture and patterns on intricate things will become more eligible. But when you are coming from like let's say 150, a good 150 to good 400, then you have to do color tweakings to really make it shine. That's why people are like log. Most of them have log settings if you want. Most of them have SDI output. Most of them have dual XLR input. So all things considered, you can really find something useful in either of these 3 again. But be aware, the cost ludicrously high, and even because the companies are not posting their MSRP, you really can't make an educated guess how much they're supposed to cost. So please go to a physical shop because these things are not in high demand. So online shopping is not going to help you that much unless you have Adorama and DP, and there are some shops that do specialize in this. They will have lot of cameras in stock, and you can go there, you can check it out yourself. But again, these are some good starting options. So this was my presentation on Pro Video HandyCam. I hope you liked it, learned from it. In that case, please leave a like. If you didn't like it, don't worry about it. You can press dislike. I would urge you to press it twice to show me your extra disappointment. And please leave a comment because I reply to all of them. Subscribe, press the bell icon if you're free. And as always, thanks for watching.